In January 1946, America was eager to catch up on fun, and Florida was the destination. After the war, many Americans had experienced their first taste of winter sun while stationed for military training in places like Miami and Fort Lauderdale. They trained on the beaches and lived in vibrant holiday hotels turned into barracks. Come the early months of 1946, they returned, cash-rich and ready to enjoy. Honeymooners, golfers, and cheerful retirees flocked to Florida's winter season, embracing the new American tradition of post-war indulgence. You needed to book weeks in advance just to snag a train seat. By the late 1940s, Miami Beach and surrounding resorts had transformed into America's ultimate playground, a sprawling, fun zone stretching from the Miami River to Fort Lauderdale. The heart of this entertainment empire was Meyer Lansky's carpet joints. Between 1946 and 1950, over 30 illegal gambling dens thrived along the Dade-Broward line, including everything from wire rooms and horse parlors to full-scale casinos. If you drove up the coast to Hallandale, you might have to dodge waves crashing over the blacktop and avoid the shells of giant land crabs capable of puncturing your tires. The first spot you'd hit at the county line was Club Bohème, a glamorous night spot with gambling and a floor show, run by the local impresario Albert Papa Boucher. Alternatively, if you took the darker, less-traveled US 1, you'd come upon Greenacres on your left, a rough-and-ready venue where high-stakes craps games unfolded New York style, with players betting directly against each other. Meyer Lansky, ever the shrewd businessman, had stakes in these hot new spots, maintaining his presence in Florida's burgeoning gambling scene. His brother Jake managed the operations in Broward, making Florida his home and embodying the quintessential frontman for their ventures. In the background, Broward County's Sheriff Walter Clark, re-elected on his liberal stance, turned a blind eye to gambling, ensuring the area was a sanctuary for those looking to avoid the more stringent policing of nearby Miami. Under his oversight, Broward boasted one of the lowest crime rates for a U.S. resort county, while Miami faced crackdowns and raids aimed at cleansing the city of gambling-related crime. This era marked a golden age of excess, where America's post-war consumerism met the shady, exhilarating world of underground casinos, and Florida became the glittering epicenter of a nation determined to play. Claude Littoral, resplendent in his black tie, became even more striking with the sleeve of his missing arm casually tucked into a tuxedo pocket. He presided over the desk that guarded the gateway from the dining area to the gambling room, a line that, once crossed, nudged an innocent evening toward the realm of the illicit. Locals, apologetically turned away, retreated to the bar or showroom. Drunks and prostitutes were firmly escorted out, and uniformed individuals were outright banned, as trouble with them could attract unwanted attention from military police or other formidable authorities, like the federal agents, over which Meyer and his associates held no sway. By the winter of 1946, Hallandale had transformed its nascent operation from the early 1940s into a lucrative scheme of legalized payoffs. Casinos and betting parlors funneled money straight into city coffers, burgeoning into a significant revenue stream for the local government. Joseph Varron, soon-to-be city attorney, recalled a remarkable scheme. Registered voters, then just a few hundred before the 1950s, each received $35, a week's wages, annually. Local farmers enjoyed premium prices for their produce from Hallandale's bustling eateries, and job opportunities abounded. Documents from the Colonial Inn, managed by accountants Eisen and Eisen, included 12 letters dated December 1947 on official city stationery. Signed by Mayor H.C. Schwartz, each letter earnestly recommended individuals for employment during the season. Correspondence also extended to Jake Lansky, featuring gratitude from local law enforcement for generous donations. The community was deeply entrenched in this symbiosis. Local police, recently upgraded from bicycles to squad cars, yet still without radios, reported emergencies via the nearest payphone, their calls promptly refunded by an acquainted operator. These officers, alongside their duties, profited from overseeing parking outside gambling establishments. When the night concluded, a call summoned Sheriff Clark's deputies, who would ceremoniously escort the evening's substantial earnings to the bank. In Hallandale, it seemed, everyone had a stake in the game. The armoured truck company, crucial in shuttling the money safely, was owned by none other than Robert Clark, Sheriff Clark's brother, a convenient setup that kept things all in the family. The meticulous accounting of these transactions to the IRS was a tactical maneuver learned from history's hard lessons, notably the case of Al Capone in 1931. It demonstrated unequivocally that the IRS cared less about the source of a businessman's income and more about its declaration for tax purposes. Lansky and his partners skillfully navigated these waters. Ben C. Eisen, the accountant for the Colonial Inn, adeptly handled IRS inquiries into expenses such as those of George Sadlow, tasked with recruiting the most honest and trustworthy casino dealers. Despite these dealers serving illegal gambling operations, their recruitment expenses were fully deductible, illustrating the peculiar realities of tax regulations. Eisen explained these deductions with aplomb, justifying Sadlow's nationwide recruitment trips as essential for maintaining the casino's high standards during Florida's bustling winter season. Yet the reality behind the neatly filed tax documents was layered. At the close of each gambling night, the drop from each table was meticulously counted by Meyer and Jake Lansky. Only the essential funds needed to cover daily operations, modest cash reserves, and some profit were recorded officially. This practice, known in the shadowy vernacular of the era as the casino skim, was a clever manipulation of the records. This unreported cash, swelling into the tens of thousands on lucrative nights, represented the true, unreported profits from their ventures. This elaborate financial dance extended beyond the counting rooms. Even the top entertainers, like Joey Lewis and Sophie Tucker, engaged in under-the-table dealings, blending their official payments with covert casino winnings, or losses in Tucker's case. Frank Sinatra, emerging during these years, would later become infamous not just for his crooning, but for his alleged mob connections, stirring controversy and criticism in equal measure. In this world woven with legality and shadowy dealings, Meyer Lansky stood as a master conductor, ensuring that while the public ledger showed one truth, the reality was a complex tapestry of concealed earnings, meticulous accounting, and strategic tax planning, a world where everyone from casino bosses to crooners played their part in a well-orchestrated symphony of the semi-licit. In the vibrant yet shadowy aftermath of World War I, America's carpet joints, lavish illegal gambling clubs, became the most lucrative stages for live entertainment. Stars like Jimmy Durante and Joey Lewis didn't just perform, they mingled with their infamous employers, blurring the lines between the entertainers and the underworld. Their acts often reflected this murky association, weaving personal anecdotes with the nature of their patrons into their performances. Joe E. Lewis, dubbed the ultimate gangster entertainer, transformed personal tragedy into professional triumph. After surviving a brutal attack in Chicago in 1927 that left him severely scarred, he never snitched on his assailants. This earned him a permanent spot in the underworld's favor, particularly in Meyer Lansky's clubs from 1946 onward. In Hallandale, Lewis became an iconic figure, embodying the spirit of the era with his tipsy, wisecracking persona. Amidst rounds of gin with Meyer and Joe Adonis, Lewis was generous with his earnings, often handing out large tips to the less fortunate, with a characteristic quip to spend it on anything but food. Lewis's act resonated with his gangster audience. His penchant for whiskey, gambling and smoking mirrored their own vices. They delighted in pranks like the hot foot, a sneaky joke involving matches lit in someone's shoe, which contrasted sharply with Meyer Lansky's more reserved demeanor. Lansky, the cerebral strategist of the group, preferred engaging with literature from the Book of the Month Club, avoiding the rowdier antics of his peers. Lansky was not only the brains behind operations, but also the moral compass and mediator among his more flamboyant partners. Frank Costello, particularly sensitive about his public image as a gangster, found solace in Lansky's historical reassurances. Lansky, ever the pragmatist, pointed to the illustrious American dynasties like the Astors and the Vanderbilts, who had ascended from notorious beginnings to societal acceptance, suggesting a similar evolution for themselves. Amidst this complex backdrop, Harold Conrad, a young New York sports writer turned public relations manager at the Colonial Inn, quickly learned the intricacies of managing a high-profile, controversial venue. On his very first encounter with Lansky over a trivial expense report discrepancy, Conrad was introduced to the meticulous attention to detail that characterized Lansky's leadership. Soon, handling public relations meant more than just crafting narratives. It involved keeping the club out of the press and managing delicate situations, such as welcoming Frank Costello from New Orleans for a crucial discussion, illustrating the continuous tightrope walk of public image management in the world of organized crime. In the vibrant post-World War II era, Walter Winchell found himself in Miami Beach, where Dade County was cracking down on gambling. Amid this tension, Frank Costello worried about potentially damaging gossip from Winchell concerning the lenient gambling scene in nearby Broward. When asked for advice, Harold Conrad, leveraging his familiarity with Winchell's philanthropic interests, suggested a donation to the Damon Runyon Cancer Fund. This gesture aimed to impress Winchell, who had started the fund and held it close to his heart. Conrad promptly delivered a $5,000 check to Winchell, who was relaxing in Miami Beach. This strategic move not only diverted Winchell's attention, but also earned him an invitation to the Colonial Inn, where he enjoyed an evening of dancing, gambling, and socializing, leaving a favorable impression on Frank Costello and potentially easing the columnist's scrutiny. In the crucial history of the 1940s, it becomes evident that these men had not only influenced J. Edgar Hoover, but also those surrounding him, advisors who directed him and pinpointed the tactics of organized crime. Walter wasn't merely an associate of Hoover. He developed close friendships with Costello, Luciano, and Lansky. As a highly influential newspaper journalist, his pen wielded immense power. It could either elevate or ruin reputations. Organized crime strategically used him to ensure the incarceration of figures like Lepke. These men extended their influence far beyond government agencies. They began to control various facets of society. Department heads cultivated friendships, contacts, and charitable connections, which were now infiltrated by figures like Lansky and Costello. Their substantial financial contributions to charities portrayed them as exceptionally charitable and upstanding individuals. These donations not only cleansed their reputations, but also ensured their names stayed clear of certain publications, thanks to their status as the top donors. The seasons continued with a blend of surprises and business strategies. The arrival of George Raft, known for his gangster roles, turned into an unexpected reverse study session, with real mobsters inquiring about his stylish attire rather than Raft studying them for character insights. The gangsters' primary concern, as Conrad learned, was profit, not violence. A narrative underscored by their delight in a comedic record about a flatulence competition, which they sold for a hefty profit, emphasizing their business acumen. Lansky and Costello had to manage their ventures across America, from reopening dog racing tracks in Iowa to establishing new nightclubs in New Orleans, adapting to the changing landscape of legal and public perceptions. Despite the challenges of inconsistent regulations across states, they continued to navigate through the evolving business and regulatory environments of post-war America, underscoring the blend of entertainment, business savvy, and strategic philanthropy that defined their operations. In late 1945, as Las Vegas was evolving into a budding casino hub, Benjamin Bugsy Siegel, not wanting to be left behind in the wave of new developments, turned his eyes towards the El Cortez, a downtown gambling hotel that had shown consistent success. With numerous local partners and financial aid from his old friend Lansky, Siegal managed to invest in the El Cortez. This venture proved to be profitable, and within a short span, Siegal and his partners were able to sell the hotel for a significant profit. Despite the challenges of inconsistent regulations across states, they continued to navigate through the evolving business and regulatory environments of post-war America, underscoring the blend of entertainment, business savvy, and strategic philanthropy that defined their operations. In late 1945, as Las Vegas was evolving into a budding casino hub, Benjamin Bugsy Siegel, not wanting to be left behind in the wave of new developments, turned his eyes towards the El Cortez, a downtown gambling hotel that had shown consistent success. With numerous local partners and financial aid from his old friend Lansky, Siegel managed to invest in the El Cortez. This venture proved to be profitable, and within a short span, Siegel and his partners were able to sell the hotel for a significant profit. In the sultry haze of Havana, the air thick with cigar smoke and the heavy scent of anticipation, Charlie Luciano reminisced about a pivotal gathering that had once steered the fate of an empire in the making. The Hotel Nacional had played host to a meeting that would change the landscape of Las Vegas forever. As Luciano recounted, Lansky stood up, the gravity of the moment palpable in his stern demeanor. "The Siegel situation," he began, referring to Benjamin Siegel's ambitious vision that was transforming a desert stopover into a glittering oasis of entertainment and vice. Siegel's dream, as Luciano described with a mix of admiration and caution, was grandiose. Las Vegas as a paradise of luxury and thrill, a magnet for the high rollers and the adventurous souls of the world. However, behind the glitz, there lurked shadows. Siegel, driven by an unyielding ambition, had become ensnared in a web of his own making. His project, the Flamingo, was bleeding money, and not just any money but that of the most dangerous men in America. There was no doubt in Meyer's mind that Bugsy had skimmed this dough from the building budget, Luciano stated, his voice a low growl of betrayal mixed with regret. Lansky had laid bare the stark truth. Siegel was pilfering from their coffers, perhaps even preparing to flee should his castle of cards collapse. The room, filled with the most feared mob bosses, fell into a tense silence as Lansky spoke. Each word was measured, each sentence a nail in the coffin of Siegel's fate. Luciano, his gaze unwavering, watched as the decision unfolded, the weight of command heavy on his shoulders. "So it was put to a vote," he said, the finality in his voice echoing off the opulent walls. The vote was unanimous. Siegel, the visionary turned pariah, was marked for death. Yet, even in this dark hour, there was a sliver of hope, a gamble on the success of the Flamingo. If the place was a success, there were ways to take care of Benny for stealing without bumping him off, Luciano pointed out, the loyalty to an old friend still flickering in his heart. Siegel had been one of them, a comrade in arms from the early days, with Lansky and Frank Costello. None of them truly wished to see him fall, but the ruthless laws of their world left little room for error. As the meeting adjourned, the tension gradually gave way to revelry. The Hotel Nacional blossomed into a hub of celebration, ostensibly to honor Frank Sinatra, but truly a welcome back for Luciano himself. The week was filled with laughter, music, and the company of beautiful women, a stark contrast to the grave decisions made in the shadows. In them days, the word that was around about what was going on at the Hotel Nacional was off limits, Luciano reminisced with a wry smile. The secrecy was ironclad, the power they wielded absolute. No word of their dealings reached the ears of the outside world. safeguarded by the omnipotent hand of political influence and fear. Thus, in a blend of danger and desire, the destiny of Las Vegas, the fate of Benjamin Siegel, and the legacy of Charlie Luciano were forged in the crucible of that Havana meeting. A story of vision, betrayal, and the harsh justice of the mob. As December rolled around, the preparations intensified. Virginia Hill, Siegel's partner, moved into his penthouse suite, signaling her permanent place in his life and the Flamingo's narrative. The luxury of the establishment was underscored by the private accommodations and extravagant personal expenditures, such as the $3,500 gown Virginia had specially made for the opening. Despite Siegel's efforts to control the narrative and ensure a flawless launch, the article in Las Vegas Life, penned by Greenspun, offered a somewhat cheeky portrayal of Siegel's ambitions and his journey to legitimacy through the Flamingo. Appreciating the publicity, albeit oblivious to its nuanced jabs, Siegel was pleased enough to offer Greenspun a permanent role as the hotel's press agent, a position Greenspun declined in favor of maintaining his independence with his magazine. The Flamingo's water features, like the impressive waterfall at the front entrance, were another testament to Siegel's vision. Engineered with rock, plaster, and lumber, and enhanced by circulating pumps and colored spotlights, the waterfall was designed to be visible from a mile away, symbolizing the bold and extravagant essence of the Flamingo and Siegel's dream of creating an oasis of entertainment and luxury in the middle of the Nevada desert. As Siegel watched over the final touches to the Flamingo, his complex dance with the press, his relentless pursuit of grandeur, and his tumultuous relationship with Virginia Hill all converged to set the stage for one of the most significant and storied casino openings in Las Vegas history. As the grand opening of the Flamingo approached, an unexpected hiccup arose involving a cat and her kittens taking refuge in a crucial part of the casino's fountain system. When informed of the situation, Siegel, renowned for his ruthlessness, displayed an unusual bout of superstition and compassion. He instructed the groundskeeper to leave the kittens undisturbed, citing that it was bad luck for a gambler to harm a cat. This decision meant the fountain remained off during the opening, an ill omen that seemed to set the tone for the evening. The opening night, December 26th, was less than auspicious. Siegel, initially underdressed, faced the scorn of Virginia Hill, who demanded he present himself appropriately for what was supposed to be his triumph. The turnout was dismal, with more staff than guests, and the high-profile celebrities like George Raft and Charles Coburn could not salvage the night. The mood was somber, a stark contrast to the lavish setting. The following days did not bring better fortunes. Siegel's competitors from downtown Las Vegas seemed determined to see him fail, possibly using underhanded tactics to ensure his new venture flopped. High rollers, sponsored by rival casinos, won big, draining the Flamingo's coffers. Siegel's desperation was palpable as he shuffled dealers and switched gaming equipment in vain attempts to stem the losses. The strained atmosphere reached a boiling point when Siegel caught a croupier cheating. In a fit of rage, he physically assaulted the man, an act of violence that underscored the chaotic state of affairs. Meanwhile, George Raft, having lost a significant sum the previous night, was barred by Siegel from playing further, straining their friendship. The Flamingo's financial troubles were compounded by massive construction debts and operational costs. The casino was hemorrhaging money due to alleged cheating and possibly rigged games. The local gossip mills, fueled by Siegel's notorious past, painted him as a dangerous man, deterring many potential patrons. A casual interaction with a local businessman resulted in Siegel banning the man from the Flamingo, illustrating his short fuse and the tense environment he fostered. Faced with mounting losses and a tarnished reputation, Siegel decided to shut down the Flamingo temporarily in January 1947 until all facilities were completed. Virginia Hill, overwhelmed by allergies and perhaps the stress of the situation, retreated to Beverly Hills. She immersed herself in a life of luxury and distractions, distancing herself from the desert's harsh environment and the Flamingo's troubles. During this interlude, Virginia's life in Beverly Hills was as tumultuous as the opening of the Flamingo. Her residence became a venue for lavish spending and emotional volatility. An incident involving a loaded gun and a late-night call indicated the ongoing drama that surrounded her, reflecting the continuous strain under which both she and Siegal operated. On the chilly evening of December 26th, the air in the conference room was thick with anticipation, not for the usual strategizing, but for updates on the Flamingo's opening in Las Vegas. The atmosphere was electric. Every phone rang, pulling the mob bosses closer to the edge of their seats. However, as reports rolled in, the mood quickly soured. Cold, relentless rain dampened the inaugural festivities, a grim omen that did not escape the cunning mind of Meyer Lansky. Charlie Luciano, pacing by the window, listened intently as Lansky approached with a grim expression. "Charlie, with that kind of weather, only a miracle can save the Flamingo," Lansky confided, his voice low and urgent. He continued, "And there's something else I have to tell you. Before I left New York, I asked some questions about opening a hotel the day after Christmas, and some people in show business laughed at me. They said the week between Christmas and New Year's is like death row, as far as entertainment is concerned." The stark reality of Lansky's words weighed heavily on Luciano. Siegal, ever the dreamer, had ignored the notoriously slow holiday season, pushing forward with an opening that now seemed doomed. Despite this, there remained a faint glimmer of hope. Siegal had enlisted top-tier talent like George Jessel, Xavier Cugat, Jimmy Durante, and George Raft. Yet, as the clock struck 3 long a.m., a fateful call confirmed their worst fears. The Flamingo, draped in luxury and promise, stood nearly empty, its opulence unaffordable and intimidating to the everyday gambler. The ramifications were immediate and severe. The mob bosses, who had collectively sunk the equivalent of over $147 million into the Flamingo, were enraged. A hasty meeting ensued, tempers flaring with the prospect of catastrophic financial losses. Some were ready to dispatch a hit team to end Siegal's misadventures once and for all. Yet, in the eye of the storm, stood Meyer Lansky, ever the strategist. He called for calm, outlining a plan that pivoted on the edge of legal precarity. "We may consider declaring bankruptcy," Lansky suggested, navigating through the potential legal minefield laid by creditors like Samuel C. Rothberg, who was keen on scrutinizing the books. His proposal was audacious. Let the Flamingo declare bankruptcy to staunch the financial hemorrhage, then form a new consortium to buy out the original operation and its creditors at pennies on the dollar. While skepticism initially clouded the room, Lansky's vision for Las Vegas remained unshaken. He saw not just a casino, but a burgeoning empire in the desert, ripe for the taking if only they steered through this storm. Convincing the ensemble of mob powers, from the Chicago outfit and the Southern Mafia figures like Carlos Marcello and Santo Traficante, to the Maceo family and the New York mob, Lansky argued for a reinvigorated investment. By January, the Flamingo temporarily shuttered its doors for renovations, a strategic retreat to regroup and relaunch stronger. Under the watchful eye of Lansky, funds were marshaled for a grandiose makeover. The stage was being set not just for a casino's revival, but for Lansky's eventual dominion over this desert dream. In those tense days, as Luciano later reflected, the seeds of a new era in Las Vegas were sown, intertwined with the fate of a friend whose ambition had flown too close to the sun. The tale of the Flamingo, as told by Charlie Luciano, was one of high stakes, betrayal, and the ruthless calculus of power. By early 1947, the Flamingo was forced to close temporarily, less than a month after opening, due to these financial difficulties. Despite substantial investments from many, including a significant personal investment from Lansky, the Flamingo's early days were marked by high costs and operational chaos that strained the resources and patience of all involved. Siegel's frustrations were palpable when he visited Florida in early 1947, visibly stressed and fiercely protective of his reputation. An unfortunate interaction at the Colonial Inn, where he reacted violently to being called Bugsy, highlighted his volatile state during this period. Despite these pressures, Siegel managed to find some relief and success in other gambling ventures, like the craps games in Greenacres, demonstrating his knack for gambling and perhaps a momentary escape from his troubles with the Flamingo. This tumultuous period in Siegel's life illustrates the high-risk, high-reward nature of Las Vegas casino developments and the personal toll it could exact on those deeply involved. The Flamingo would eventually become a cornerstone of the Las Vegas Strip, but not without significant hardship and drama that characterized its early days. The situation surrounding Benjamin "Bugsy" Siegel and the Flamingo Hotel Casino was fraught with high stakes and higher tensions. By early 1947, Siegel found himself navigating a sea of discontent among his investors and partners back in Nevada. Harold Conrad, an observer within the circle, noted the growing dissatisfaction. At gatherings, Siegel's absence was marked by blunt criticisms and doubts about the viability of the Las Vegas investment. The consensus among many was clear. Investing in the stupid little sandy town of Las Vegas was seen as Siegel's folly, one they initially believed was a grave mistake. Despite the prevailing skepticism, Lansky and Frank Costello continued to back Siegel, both financially and morally. Lansky, in particular, was a staunch supporter of his longtime friend and business associate, urging a more thoughtful consideration of the Flamingo's potential. Driven by Lansky's confidence and the need to recoup their substantial investments, additional funds were funneled into the project to finalize the hotel rooms and other incomplete aspects of the Flamingo. As the Flamingo reopened in March 1947, the pressure was immense. The project was not just about recovering financial investments, it was also about validating Siegel's vision for Las Vegas and proving the city could indeed become a lucrative entertainment capital. The reopening was Siegel's final shot to prove that his dream of a luxury casino resort in the desert was not only viable, but could also be profitable. In his collaboration with Uri Dan, Lansky revealed that it was he, along with Costello and Luciano, who channeled significant organized crime investments into the Flamingo Hotel. Their conviction was easily won over, particularly since Hollywood celebrities had already footed much of the bill. By February 1947, Lucky Luciano was deported to Italy on the SS Bakir, a Turkish ship. Lansky and his associates clung to the hope that Luciano could return to the US if Dewey triumphed over Truman in the upcoming presidential race. They believed that supporting Dewey's campaign would give them leverage to persuade the very man who had incarcerated Luciano to allow his return. Meanwhile, the grand plans for the Isle of Pines and Luciano's seemingly improving situation were overshadowed by a tense meeting at the National Hotel in December 1946. The gathering primarily focused on the dire financial overrun at the Flamingo, orchestrated by Bugsy Siegel. Siegel, along with his companions Virginia and Lansky, frequently traveled between Los Angeles and Las Vegas to oversee the hotel's completion. A significant issue arose when Virginia Hill was given carte blanche to oversee the decor, leading to lavish but costly choices. As Doc Stacher lamented, "It was costing us a fortune." At this pivotal meeting, Lansky unveiled a bombshell. The cost to complete the Flamingo had ballooned to $6 million, not the $1 million initially estimated. Despite the uproar this caused, Lansky urged calm, asserting that these expenses were trivial compared to the forthcoming profits. He disclosed that Siegel had secured funding from various film stars and that two of his financial backers had grown restless over the escalating costs and delays. The situation was further complicated by rumors of Virginia Hill's frequent trips to Zurich. Officially, she was procuring furnishings and curtains, but whispers suggested she deposited approximately $500,000 into a Swiss bank account, implying Siegel was siphoning construction funds for private use. His deep infatuation with Virginia, who had a voracious appetite for money, led many to believe that Siegel's days were numbered. Despite these tensions, Lansky endeavored to protect his friend. At the meeting, he passionately implored the gangsters to delay their judgment, proposing they allow the Flamingo's opening to pass before taking any drastic actions. This appeal marked a rare emotional outburst from Lansky, but the cold response from the room signaled Siegel's grim fate. Yet, out of respect for Lansky, they agreed to a brief reprieve. Lansky hurried to California in a last-ditch effort to counsel Siegel, but upon returning, he admitted defeat. "I can't do a thing with him." Ultimately, Lansky's intervention led to the decision to proceed with the Flamingo's grand opening the day after Christmas, incomplete as it may be. He starkly warned Bugsy that the success of this event would determine his fate, a clear, albeit brutal reminder of the stakes at play. On Christmas Eve, as the titans of the American underworld clinked glasses at the Nacional Hotel, a dramatic encounter unfolded between Meyer Lansky and Charlie Luciano. Amid an extravagant banquet, a feast for Sinatra, unreported in the Havana press thanks to Lansky's sway, yet a spectacle thoroughly relished by the criminal elite, Luciano pulled Lansky aside. With a piercing gaze, he delivered a stark message. "Meyer, your affection for Bugsy mirrors the love you hold for your own kin. But remember, this is strictly business. Bugsy is pilfering our funds, spiriting them away to Switzerland. He's not just betraying us, he's robbing us blind, and both of us know it." Stacher later reflected that Lansky recognized, just as they all did, that Bugsy had undergone a radical transformation ever since falling for Virginia Hill. Bugsy's wife, Esther, who had once forgiven his myriad affairs with actresses and dancers, found Virginia to be the last straw. She lived brazenly with Bugsy, pushing Esther to confide in Lansky, pleading with him to intervene. Lansky even traveled to Chicago to consult with his old ally Joe Epstein, who had previously been entangled with Virginia Hill. Despite her leaving him for a string of mobsters, including Joe Adonis, Epstein confessed he still financially supported her. Stacher recounted Epstein's resigned admission to Lansky. "Once that girl gets under your skin, it's like a cancer. Utterly incurable." Returning to Esther with heavy news, Lansky conveyed a grim reality. "I've seen them together, and they're utterly besotted, like teenagers swept up in first love. There's nothing to be done." He suggested that the only course left might be a dramatic one, urging Esther to file for divorce, hoping that such a shock might jolt Bugsy back to his senses. She did it. Esther followed Meyer Lansky's advice and secured a Reno divorce, returning to New York with a heavy heart. Yet, this drastic step seemed only to intensify Bugsy Siegel's ardor for Virginia Hill, their love growing stronger with each passing day, defying the cold calculus of the mob's expectations. In Havana, amidst the swirling cigar smoke and clinking glasses, two of Lansky's partners, Mo Dalitz and the venerable Longy Zwilman, urged Lansky to rein in Bugsy before it became too late. The implication was clear and dire. Yet, it was Charlie Luciano, during the star-studded Christmas Eve banquet, who issued a chilling directive to his old friend. "Unless Bugsy turns that hotel into a roaring success, you know as well as I do he'll have to be shot. And if you don't have the heart to do it, Meyer, I'll have to order the execution myself." Moments later, Lansky was seen with tears in his eyes, a rare crack in his stoic demeanor. He withdrew to his room, disappearing for 2 hours as Frank Sinatra serenaded the absent mobster. During this solitary retreat, Lansky placed a crucial call to Lou Rothkopf in Cleveland, instructing him to ensure that Mickey Cohen, Bugsy's lieutenant and bodyguard in Los Angeles, kept Bugsy within sight at all times. "If anything happens to Bugsy, Mickey will answer to me," Lansky warned, signaling the gravity of the situation. The following day, the Havana meeting continued, yet minds were in Las Vegas, where the Flamingo stood as a monument to ambition and excess. Over $1 million had been poured into the hotel, ensuring that every bathroom boasted separate sewage pipes, and only the finest materials, marble, wood, and state-of-the-art equipment, were used. Bugsy had even flown in skilled laborers from across the country, paying a premium for their speed. But as Bugsy pushed for perfection, he faced setbacks, including a problematic air conditioning system crucial for the desert city. Every delay, every misstep cost dearly. Finally, on December 26th, with Virginia by his side and a galaxy of stars like Jimmy Durante and Xavier Cugat in attendance, Bugsy opened the Flamingo. Despite his efforts, the opening was marred by bad weather in Los Angeles, preventing many guests from arriving. The period between Christmas and New Year's, typically quiet in the entertainment industry, compounded the problems. The grand event turned into a spectacular flop, with the casino hemorrhaging over $100,000 in 2 weeks. Back in Havana, the news of the debacle hit hard. The next day, Lansky, ever the strategist, proposed a bold move to salvage the Flamingo and Siegel's fate, placing the owning corporation into receivership, establishing a syndicate to buy it out, and reorganizing under new management. While some leaders hesitated, Luciano supported Lansky, convinced that Las Vegas and the Flamingo were still ripe for profit once the initial troubles were smoothed over. Rumors swirled about Bugsy racing down to Havana to beg for his life, but the truth was more mundane yet poignant. Bugsy had left Las Vegas for the relative tranquility of his home with Virginia in Beverly Hills, perhaps hoping against hope for a second chance that would never come. Then, in a bold move of defiance and passion, Bugsy Siegel whisked Virginia off to Mexico, where they exchanged vows, cementing their tumultuous relationship with marriage. Virginia, ever the pragmatist with an eye for survival, suggested they escape to Europe with the funds they had secreted away in a Swiss bank account. Aware of the looming threats over Bugsy, she sensed that his days were numbered. But Benny, as deeply enamored as he was, possessed a steely resolve. Despite the risks, he refused to flee. He was not one to shy away from danger. He chose to stay in the United States and confront whatever fate awaited him. Upon their return from Mexico, Bugsy didn't waste a moment. He flew directly to Las Vegas. Thanks to Meyer Lansky's influence, an extension had been secured, allowing Bugsy a crucial lifeline. He swiftly reopened the Flamingo in March. The hotel was still rough around the edges, but by April, the tide began to turn. By May, Bugsy was able to report a profit of over $250,000, a testament to his relentless focus and determination. Realizing the need to concentrate fully on the hotel's success, and perhaps sensing that Virginia's presence was more of a beautiful distraction than an aid, Bugsy sent her to Paris for a holiday. He made her a promise, laced with hope and ambition. He would either join her in France or call her back to his side once he had navigated through the remaining challenges at the Flamingo. This decision marked a pivotal moment, showcasing Bugsy's unwavering commitment to his empire, even as it foreshadowed the tragic undercurrents of their storied romance. The Flamingo Hotel's grand reopening on March 1st, 1947, marked a significant turning point. With the completion of its bedrooms, the hotel was fully operational for the first time, featuring a star-studded show headlined by the Andrews Sisters. Benjamin Bugsy Siegel, ever the charismatic and innovative figure, introduced midweek bingo games to attract locals and ensure the hotel buzzed with activity even on typically quiet nights. His presence was palpable. Siegel was a fixture in the hotel, charming guests from his strategically positioned booth, complete with a personal telephone. His command center for schmoozing and overseeing operations. Despite his notorious reputation, many who knew Siegel personally recalled his warmth and charm, making it challenging to reconcile this image with his violent past. Allegedly, Siegel once confessed to having killed 12 men, a testament to the ruthless side that coexisted with his charismatic persona. This darker aspect was on full display during a tense negotiation with Billy Wilkerson, from whom Siegel sought to buy and then resell a share of the Flamingo to raise needed funds. The meeting, fraught with threats of violence, showcased Siegel's willingness to leverage his mobster background to intimidate and manipulate business outcomes. Greg Boutzer, Wilkerson's attorney, witnessed this firsthand and responded by threatening legal action, planning to document the encounter in an affidavit to be shared with the police and the FBI. Siegel's volatile reaction to this confrontation required his lawyers to intervene, highlighting his propensity for explosive anger, a trait that could dominate his demeanor and decision-making. As the Flamingo prepared for a second debut, the stakes were incredibly high. Siegel had not only his financial investment, but also his reputation on the line. The desert dream he chased was becoming more of a mirage, with each setback further entangling him in a web of financial and personal crises. The atmosphere at Virginia Hill's Beverly Hills mansion was charged with tension and paranoia. One evening, amidst a dinner party, Virginia erupted in a dramatic display, claiming that the household staff were stealing from her and threatening violence. This scene, witnessed by the guests who seemed unfazed by her outburst, highlighted the ongoing chaos in her life. Barney Ruditsky, a former New York policeman turned private detective, managed to de-escalate the situation, convincing Virginia to put down her gun and calm down. Later, when recounting the incident to the Kefauver Committee, an investigation into organized crime, Ruditsky labeled Virginia as potentially psychopathic, a harsh judgment reflecting the extreme stress and instability that marked her existence. Amidst these personal upheavals, the situation with the Flamingo was deteriorating. Virginia was deeply resentful of the desert lifestyle and the Flamingo itself, a project that encapsulated Ben Siegel's immense struggles. Siegel was financially stretched, having to buy out Billy Wilkerson's share for $120,000, a critical sum at a moment when liquidity was a dire necessity. Moreover, Little Mo Sedway, once seen as a loyal subordinate, had grown financially independent and ambitious, distancing himself from Siegel. Sedway's transformation was significant. He had begun to embrace a dual life, mingling with the respectable community and contributing generously to local charities, even as he maintained his underworld connections. However, his activities extended beyond social climbing. He was reportedly acting as an informant for the FBI, detailing the comings and goings of Las Vegas's criminal elements, who viewed the city as a safe haven. These reports eventually reached Siegel, further straining their relationship. According to writers Ed Reed and Ovid Damaris, this tension climaxed when Siegel publicly humiliated Sedway, an act that was witnessed by Chick Hill. Rather than a direct confrontation, Siegel opted for a demeaning gesture that struck Sedway on his rear end, a symbolic blow that turned their rivalry into mutual hatred. This incident epitomized the breaking point in a relationship marred by betrayal and shifting loyalties, underlining the volatile dynamics within Siegel's circle as he fought to salvage his faltering dream with the Flamingo. In Beverly Hills, Chief Anderson received a tip that set the underworld on edge. Meanwhile, rumors swirled in Chicago that Virginia Hill had jetted off to Europe, seeking a reprieve for Bugsy from Lucky Luciano himself. Lee Mortimer later penned tales of spotting notorious Eastern gunmen lurking in a Beverly Hills hotel, ominously stating they were in town for a little talk with Ben Siegel about their missing investments in his casino. At the Flamingo, Lansky made a discreet appearance. Officially unregistered and unseen outside his room, his presence was nonetheless palpable to the insiders. Bugsy introduced Lansky to Paul Price as his old friend, announcing that Lansky would be staying for a couple of days. As Siegal went about his daily routines, shadowed by his entourage, Jaime Siegal, Dave Berman, and Fat Irish Green, he appeared more irascible than usual. He summoned major bookies from across Nevada, California, and Arizona to a heated meeting where he announced a doubling of the fees for his wire service. This sparked a fierce rebellion, with many operators openly accusing Siegal of gouging them to cover his losses at the Flamingo. On the night of June 13th, as the discontented bookies departed grumbling, Siegal made a mysterious call to Price. "I have to fly to LA on some money business, Paul, and I want you to come along." "Meet me at the airport," Siegal instructed. They flew out close to midnight, landing in a deserted Glendale around 2 a.m. After struggling to find a taxi, they arrived at the Linden Drive house. There they discussed business for an hour in the living room, while Siegal made fresh coffee and sipped Remy Martin. Price later recalled Siegal's eerie calmness, noting how he confidently walked through the house with all curtains drawn back, showing no sign of fear, despite being openly vulnerable that night. The next afternoon, Siegal and Price returned to Las Vegas, their return unnoticed by any potential assailants. Back in Beverly Hills, a more personal drama unfolded. Just before midnight, Chick and Jerry were startled awake by noises downstairs. Chick, armed and cautious, called out and heard the sound of someone fleeing. Discovering the back door forced open, he secured it, disturbed by the intrusion, but returned to bed, leaving the lights on as a deterrent. On June 19th, tension at the Flamingo spiked when 4 men resembling underworld guerrillas demanded Siegal's whereabouts. After a brief confrontation, they disappeared into Las Vegas, leaving Siegal to receive ominous phone calls threatening his life. Despite efforts to trace these calls, Siegal maintained a facade of indifference, even discussing plans for a fundraising dinner with Little Mo Sedway, a conversation later questioned for its authenticity. That same afternoon, Siegal prepared for another secretive trip. "I'm coming down tonight with Swifty Morgan," he informed Chick Hill. "I've got a meeting with Paul Price at Joe Ross's law office in the afternoon, and I want to get my clothes. Don't wait up for me, because I'm not leaving here until after midnight." As the sun set on June 19th, the air was thick with foreboding, the city holding its breath as Bugsy Siegel navigated the dangerous currents of his empire, seemingly oblivious to the darkening storm clouds gathering around him. Around 8 p.m., Siegel summoned Fat Irish Green to his private office. Green, not only one of Siegel's bodyguards, but also the timekeeper, was shown a briefcase bulging with currency. Green later claimed it contained only $60,000, though government investigators suspected it might have been as much as $600,000. "I'm heading to Los Angeles for a couple of days," Siegel informed him. "I'm leaving this bundle with you, Irish. Nobody in Vegas knows you've got it." "What's going on, Ben?" Green asked, sensing the weight of the moment. "Nothing. I'm just leaving it with you. Just in case," Siegel replied. "If anything happens to me, you just sit tight, and there'll be some guys who'll come and take the money off your hands." At midnight, Siegel and Swifty Morgan were driven to the airport. Swifty, always the jokester with his long mustache and goatee, kept the mood light as they boarded Western Airlines Flight 23 for Los Angeles. They landed at Mines Field around 2:30 in the morning, took a cab, and went straight to the Linden Drive house. Despite the late hour, Chick was awake, but Siegel was too exhausted for conversation. After ensuring Swifty was settled in a guest room, Siegel checked Virginia's room out of habit and then retired to his own, falling asleep immediately. The next morning, they were served breakfast by Virginia's Chinese cook, Lee. Afterwards, The phone began ringing non-stop. Siegel had lengthy conversations, though Chick, not privy to the callers' identities, noted that Siegel later headed out to Mickey Cohen's house in Brentwood. There, Siegel insisted on privacy. "Take a walk, would you, Al?" he asked Alan Smiley, who waited in the car. Inside, Siegel was cautious. "Mick, I hope this place isn't bugged," he said. "Not this one," Mickey laughed. "It's been tried." "I don't want to take any chances," Siegel pressed. "Let's go outside." Outside, Siegel inquired discreetly, "Mick, you got any guys with equipment?" "Well, Hooky Rothman's in town. Woody may be here too. They can both handle a rod pretty good." "Ask Hooky to see me tomorrow," Siegel instructed. "I'll have Hooky call you," Cohen agreed. "What's up, Ben?" Mickey probed. "Nothing much," Siegel replied casually, leaving shortly after. Later, Siegel met with George Raft, who commented on Siegel's poor condition and suggested he take a break. Siegel revealed his plans to take his daughters to Lake Louise and invited Raft to dinner, though Raft had other commitments. In the afternoon, Siegel met Paul Price at Drucker's barbershop for a full grooming session, then proceeded to Joe Ross's law office to discuss financial matters, including funds received on Virginia's behalf from Joe Epstein in Chicago. After dealing with financial strains, Siegel handed Price $300, brushing off any concerns with a terse, "Forget it." That day, as Siegel dealt with increasing pressures, he returned to North Linden Drive, where he and Chick encountered a chilling phone call that ended with Siegel slamming the receiver down, a foreboding sign of the escalating tensions. In Beverly Hills, Police Chief Clinton Anderson was investigating a robbery involving $14,000 worth of stolen jewelry, identifying a suspect from a lineup, a separate drama unfolding amidst the shadows of Siegel's tumultuous final days. On the evening of June 20th, Ben Siegel stepped into his private office and called for Fat Irish Green. Opening a briefcase brimming with currency, he revealed what appeared to be $60,000, though some speculated it held as much as $600,000. "I'm heading to Los Angeles for a couple of days," Siegel told Green, entrusting the cash to him under strict confidentiality. Around the same time, in a New York apartment, Albert Greenberg was apprehended by police without resistance, later denying involvement in a Beverly Hills caper, claiming an alibi at the Flamingo in Vegas. "Bugsy Siegel himself saw me there. He'll be my witness," he asserted. That evening, Siegel reached out to Daily Variety, speaking with Florabelle Muir to express gratitude for her review of the Flamingo's floor show and sharing plans for an upcoming major act, highlighting his ambitious outlook despite looming threats. Shortly thereafter, Alan Smiley arrived in a powder blue Cadillac, and they, along with Chick and Jerry, drove to Jack's restaurant in Ocean Park. Despite the undercurrents of tension, the evening progressed with a semblance of normalcy, marked by a seaside dinner. Upon leaving, Siegel was handed a copy of the Los Angeles Times with a haunting message: "Good night. Sleep well with the compliments of Jax." Later, at the Beverly Wilshire drugstore, Siegel, complaining of a stuffy nose, purchased Campho-Phenique, a mundane act underlined by the tension of the night. Returning home, Siegel sensed an odd floral scent, which unnerved him despite Jerry and Chick's inability to detect it. An old superstition haunted Chick. The smell of unseen flowers was an omen of impending death. Meanwhile, a suspicious old Pontiac, carrying rough-looking individuals, queried a cab driver for directions to North Linden Drive, subtly underscoring the creeping danger approaching Siegel's sanctuary. As Ben Siegel and Al Smiley sat together in the dimly lit living room of Virginia's house, the ominous headlines of the Los Angeles Times lay unread on Siegel's lap. The paper sprawled like a carelessly placed napkin. Despite Virginia's lavish attempts to redecorate, the room struggled against its incongruent floral and Moorish elements, a clash embodied by an oil painting of a dowager and a bronze statue of Cupid, both adjacent to the fireplace. Outside, unnoticed by the two men, tension brewed. Behind the lattice framing the property, a shadowy figure stood, a .30-30 carbine poised in hand, its barrel resting in a notch of wood. The finger on the trigger trembled slightly, aiming at Siegel's unsuspecting profile. He was unaware of the impending danger, feeling secure in a community renowned for its safety and low crime rate, as touted by Chief Anderson. Tragically, the peace was shattered when the first bullet burst through the window, striking Siegel with fatal precision, catapulting his right eye across the room, his iconic baby blue eyes nickname given by George Raft, becoming a grim irony as his eyelashes stuck grotesquely to a door jamb. Further bullets wreaked havoc in the room, tearing through Smiley's coat, shattering a painting, and demolishing a small statue of Bacchus atop Virginia's piano, scattering marble shards across the keys. In the chaos, neither Siegel's companions knew immediately what had transpired. It was like a barrage of firecrackers, overwhelming and disorienting. Smiley, in a panicked state, somehow ended up inside the fireplace as Chick Hill hurriedly doused and then reignited the lights. The scene was one of horror. Chick dashed towards the stairs where Jerry Mason stood frozen, her face etched with shock. "Call the cops," he screamed. In her haste, Jerry mistakenly dialed Barney Ruditsky's private detective office instead of the police, her voice trembling as she relayed their dire situation. Amidst the pandemonium, Chick remembered the safe hidden in Virginia's room. He retrieved Virginia's cache of jewels, valued at $100,000, and in a desperate attempt to conceal them before authorities arrived, he tossed them down the laundry chute, where they landed atop a heap of dirty linen. Collapsing into the nearest chair, Chick's body shook uncontrollably with the adrenaline and terror of the night's events. As he sat, dreading the return downstairs, the echoes of the night's brutal interruption hung heavily in the air, underscored by the chilling parting message on the newspaper Siegel had carried home. "Good night. Sleep well with the compliments of Jax." That evening, Maurice Rosen and Gus Greenbaum walked into the Flamingo Hotel, where Mo Sedway was in charge. They informed Sedway that there had been a change in ownership and instructed him to carry on as if nothing had happened. Given Rosen and Greenbaum's previous connections with Lansky in Miami, Havana, and New York, it was immediately assumed that Lansky was behind Bugsy Siegel's killing. However, Joe Stacher and Lansky consistently maintained that the hit was ordered solely by Luciano, likely conveyed directly to Jack Dragner. Dragner, still nursing resentment over Siegel's encroachment on his territory, would have eagerly accepted the task. Although the identity of the actual killer remains officially unknown, Luciano's influence extended even from Italy. Stacher later remarked, "It was clear to us afterward that he had ordered Bugsy to be shot. Maybe he did it even before he left Cuba. Only Lucky could have ordered Mickey to make himself scarce." Despite Lansky's denials, rumors persisted about his involvement in Siegel's death. Esther Siegel, however, remained loyal to Lansky. In 1959, during an FBI interview at her East End Avenue home in New York City, she spoke highly of Lansky, noting that he was the best man at her wedding in 1928 and had a close relationship with her late husband. In Chicago, upon hearing of Bugsy's death, Joe Epstein contacted Virginia Hill Siegel in Paris, advised her to stay there, and provided her with money. Virginia, deeply distressed and having attempted suicide, later told investigators that Siegel was the only man she had ever truly loved. A few weeks later, when Lansky requested, she returned the money Bugsy had hidden in a Swiss bank account and adhered to instructions on how to handle Siegel's death. Virginia herself succumbed to an overdose of drugs in March 1966. Under Gus Greenbaum's management and backed by Lansky's syndicate, the Flamingo Hotel, which Lansky and Siegel had envisioned, became a highly profitable venture. On that fateful night when Ben Siegel met his grisly end, Police Chief Anderson was miles away in New York, leaving Captain William White and Lieutenant P.R. Smith to be the first Beverly Hills officers on the grim scene. But it was not long before the house at 808 North Linden became a hotbed of activity, swarming with newspapermen, special agents, and the morbidly curious from the coroner's office. They found Siegel's body, a grotesque tableau that looked almost as if he had been reading the Times, if not for the gruesome spatter of blood that painted a macabre scene. Outside, investigators discovered 9.30 caliber cartridge cases in the driveway, silent witnesses to the cold-blooded murder. Across the street at 807, they spoke with Lou Shane, who recounted the chilling sound of gunfire and a car that was really traveling as it made a swift getaway. In the aftermath, the once glamorous gangster suffered ultimate indignity. His body was stripped and laid out on a cold slab in the morgue, and the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner shockingly published a front-page photo of his right foot, tagged with an express-type label incorrectly spelling his name as Benjamin Siegel. Meanwhile, hawkers in Hollywood exploited the tragedy, beckoning tourists with shouts of, "Special today, see the house where Bugsy Siegel met his end." Amidst the chaos, Alan Smiley, who had narrowly escaped death himself when a bullet merely grazed his coat sleeve, became an immediate suspect. Mickey Cohen later insisted that the bullet that missed Smiley was just a fluke, asserting, "These guys don't miss, and if they had wanted Smiley, they would have taken him." However, investigators were skeptical, noting Smiley's close association with Siegel throughout the day and his convenient position at the scene. Despite Smiley's dodgy past, which included arrests for gambling and assault, and his current scrutiny by the Immigration Department, the focus soon expanded to include others present that night. Chick Hill, despite being downstairs at the time, found himself ensnared in the investigation, his indignation boiling over as he recounted how the police and DA treated him like a hardened criminal, complete with an unwelcome paparazzi ambush. Even Swifty Morgan, the arthritic card player whose later life was shrouded in mystery, was dragged from his bed for questioning, but proved to be a dead end. As for the broader circle of Siegel's acquaintances, Paul Price, Joe Ross, George Raft, and even Mickey Cohen, they were left to learn of the night's horrors through the whispers and headlines of a city captivated by the violent downfall of one of its most notorious figures. Mickey Cohen himself, ever the candid rogue, maintained his innocence with a chilling ethos. "I never killed nobody that didn't deserve killing by my standards." Mickey Cohen, notorious for his chatter, inadvertently landed himself in Alcatraz on an income tax conviction, heedless of the sage advice inscribed on a plaque behind Chief Anderson's desk. "Oh Lord, help me to keep my big mouth shut unless I know what I'm talking about." Even Esther Siegal, the dead gangster's ex-wife, found herself tangled in the feverish hunt for answers. Draped in anxiety, chain-smoking lipstick-stained cigarettes, she defended Siegel as a devoted husband and father in the district attorney's office. Despite their divorce, attributed to his absence, she maintained her ignorance about any motive for his murder. After laying Siegel to rest, she and her daughters retreated to New York, far from the Hollywood spotlight. Chief Anderson, meanwhile, waded through the complexities of the case with a detective's keen edge. His directive was clear: apprehend Mo Sedway from Vegas as soon as he surfaced. Anderson was convinced Sedway held the key to unraveling the mystery. In a nondescript Sacramento Valley motel, a man encountered the stark headline, "Bugsy Siegel slain." With whiskey as his morning salve, he digested the news of Siegel's demise, his face hauntingly smiling from the paper. After a contemplative moment, he washed down a handful of red capsules with more whiskey, sealing his own fate. His final wish was honored as he was laid to rest above Siegel in the Beth Olam Cemetery in Hollywood. Back in Beverly Hills, the investigation spiraled into chaos with endless dead ends and wild goose chases. Confessions and accusations flew, from a convict in Oklahoma claiming he drove the getaway car to a Mexican drug peddler alleging Siegel had swindled him. none led anywhere substantial. Mo Sedway, as anticipated, came to Beverly Hills but quickly spiraled into ill health. Promising to meet with Anderson after a night's rest, he instead vanished back to Vegas, eluding the chief's grasp. Their paths wouldn't cross again until the Kefauver crime hearings in 1951, leaving Anderson ever convinced of Sedway's involvement. Amidst the frenzy, taxi driver Arthur Day reached his breaking point. One evening, haunted by what he had witnessed the night Siegal died, he approached a parked police car on Santa Monica Boulevard. Compelled by a sense of duty, he divulged everything to the officers, hoping his information might shine a light on the darkened corners of the case. Arthur Day, a taxi driver for Yellow Taxi, carried with him a harrowing secret that would soon rattle his sense of security. Weeks after the chilling night of Ben Siegel's murder, it dawned on him that he might be the sole witness who had seen the killers en route to their grim task. As this realization took hold, paranoia crept in. Every passenger appeared as a potential gangster. Every shadow hinted at danger. Overwhelmed by fear, Day's nerves frayed to the point where his driving became hazardous. Ultimately, he abandoned his cab and sought anonymity in an aircraft plant far from the glamour and menace of Beverly Hills. Yet, the past would not let him go so easily. State Special Agent Ray McCarthy, following a lead from the cab company, tracked him down. Day recounted his experience again, his memory vivid with the face of the man he saw that ominous night. Under McCarthy's request, he sketched the face of the backseat passenger, a dark, brooding figure that haunted his every line. When McCarthy returned with a collection of police mugshots, Day immediately recognized the man from his drawing. The suspect, along with another whose face Day identified as the one who asked for directions, were both known associates of the Gus Greenbaum gang from Arizona. Despite McCarthy's efforts, the lack of jurisdiction in Arizona stymied any further investigation, leaving many questions unanswered. Chief Anderson, swamped in the chaotic aftermath at the Beverly Hills Police Headquarters, never learned of Arthur Day's crucial testimony, the officers he confided in that night having failed to report his story. Anderson was skeptical of the involvement of the Arizona gangsters. The meticulous planning of Siegel's murder suggested insiders with intimate knowledge of his movements, not out-of-towners who needed directions. Yet he remained convinced that Mo Sedway and Greenbaum orchestrated the hit, believing they could easily have hired gunmen from afar to execute the job. Little Mo Sedway, whose health was rapidly declining, died in 1952 before shedding any light on the mystery. He was interred not far from Siegal, in a grand crypt that stood in stark contrast to Siegel's more modest final resting place. As the spectacle of Siegel's murder turned North Linden Drive into a macabre tourist attraction, Chick and Jerry hunkered down, besieged by the curious and the morbid. In the midst of this, Chick received a call from Virginia Hill in Paris. Stoically, she instructed him to pack up her belongings and meet her in Florida. Assisted by Richard Lee Morley, a young TV producer and one of Virginia's admirers, they gathered and packed Virginia's possessions. Amid this turmoil, Chick also managed Virginia's financial obligations, settling her accounts with the help of funds urgently sent from Chicago. The grief and chaos culminated when George Raft, an old friend, approached indirectly through his assistant. Chick's raw, grief-stricken outburst at Raft's perceived insensitivity highlighted the strained and complex relationships within their circle, reflecting a deeper disillusionment and the harsh realities of their intertwined lives. In the shadow of the tragic events that unfolded on that fateful June night, George Raft found himself reflecting on his investments and the intangible costs of loyalty and friendship within the perilous echelons of organized crime. While he still held a small share of the Flamingo stock, the $100,000 loan he extended felt like another casualty in the violent end met by Ben Siegel. Raft recounted a telling anecdote about Virginia Hill's devotion to Siegal, illustrating the depths of their bonds. Virginia Hill was at my house one time, and she said, "If Ben Siegel asked me to push a lump of sugar from here to Chicago with my nose, I'd do it." This vivid imagery captured the essence of allegiance and sacrifice among those entangled with Siegel. Reflecting on Siegel's character, Raft mused, "Well, that's the kind of guy he was, if he was your friend." He firmly believed that had Siegel survived, he would have honored his debts, underscoring a complex portrait of loyalty that transcended the more sinister aspects of his persona. As Raft pondered the aftermath and Virginia Hill's uncertain future, he couldn't help but wonder about the shifting allegiances and who might step into the void left by Siegel, questioning not just who would claim Hill's affection, but also who would inherit the power and precarious positions within their intertwined worlds of glamour and danger. When the news of Siegel's murder reached Naples, the police, acting on orders from American officials, detained Luciano for questioning in connection with the shooting. Luciano was furious but maintained a calm facade, stating that Beverly Hills was 7,000 miles away and he couldn't possibly be involved in the murder of an old friend. Luciano now found himself entangled in the consequences of Siegel's violent demise, and things were starting to heat up in the criminal underworld back in the United States. Luciano provided some details about Siegel's murder.
"I never knew who actually done the job on Bugsy, but I remember that Jack Dragna had a rep for being a pretty sharp shot, but I really didn't know, and I didn't care who done it. All they had to tell me was the results."
Just because Benjamin Siegel had been murdered, it didn't mean that everything had been sorted out. It left one loose end, and that was Virginia Hill.
I didn't know Virginia. She was apparently a good-looking girl from the South somewhere, and Adonis was the first one to latch onto her when she came to New York. He gave her a job working our numbers bank, and I heard that she was a real crackpot, slept around a lot and so forth. Naturally, after Bugsy went, she was a big danger because she knew too much. There was one thing everybody was sure of them nights Bugsy spent on the pillow with her. He spilled enough into her pinky ear about the outfit and the top guys that could cause plenty of trouble. The logical thing was to get rid of her. But we had a big bookmaker in Chicago, Joe Epstein, who handled our layoffs, and he was nuts about her. He kept protecting her, sending her money even during the time she was with Bugsy. In fact, practically all the guys in the outfit who ever laid her, and that just about included, everybody stood up for her to make sure she didn't get hit. Besides, Lansky wanted to get his hands on the dough in Switzerland. But Virginia was scared to use the money, even though we heard that lots of times she was pretty bad off. When the Kosher hearings started in the United States a couple years later, Virginia was subpoenaed to testify. She got in touch with me in Naples and wanted to come see me. I knew that meant a shakedown. So, the boys arranged that if she could keep her mouth shut, we would let her dig into the Swiss account, keep some of the money and return the rest to the Treasury in New York. She never spent none of it until after the Kosher hearings were over, and we could be sure she did the right thing as far as we were concerned. When she testified, she got a laugh from the witness stand, but she never really said nothing.
Virginia Hill died in 1966, and there were rumors suggesting that she might have taken her own life. Luciano's questioning by the Italian police was brief, primarily because they had been monitoring him closely, knowing that if he were involved in anything, it likely occurred outside Italy, possibly in Havana, Cuba. Therefore, they decided to let the matter rest. Luciano returned to the Excelsior Hotel in Rome, but soon found himself hounded by the paparazzi, who were relentless in their pursuit. They invaded his privacy, hoping to capture him in unguarded moments when he might let his guard down. Their persistent efforts irritated Charlie immensely.
But it didn't make no difference whether I talked to them bastards or not. They made up stories anyway, just to print something. There was hardly a day when some newspaper didn't publish a story there. Lucky Luciano was the biggest tourist attraction in Italy next to the Isle of Capri. From the time I got back to Rome in June '47, I never did anything really bad. I mean, only black marketing and changing of money like before. Even though everybody in the country was doing it, I had to be especially careful because I was the gang boss, and everywhere I went, guys with cameras were following me, and that Asslinger guy wasn't going to give up on me just because the commission in Sicily said I could walk around like a human being. I got tipped off the American embassy in Rome had orders to force the Italian police to keep me under surveillance. I could hardly turn around without falling over them guys.